My name is Rick Firestone.
My name is Ben Bugale, and you're listening to pixelprojectradio, a video game and video game club style podcast where we sit back, relax, and talk about video games that we like, some we don't like, but hopefully games that at the end of the day we all love. And today we've got a couple of special boys with us. Rick, would you care to introduce our special friends?
Well, I don't have the particular gusto and mellifluous pipes that their announcer has, but I'll do my best. Prepare yourself for ListOff with your hosts and our guests today, Brian and Ryan. We've got the ListOff podcast here.
That's right.
We are very happy to be on. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for being here now.
Oh, very happy to be here. I have a little inside baseball when it comes to that announcer voice. Friend of the show, Mark, who did the voiceover, sent us like 3 different takes, and you'd appreciate this, Rick. One of them was a Smash Brothers announcer take. Nice. It ended up not being the one we used, but it was pretty spot on.
That is awesome. I've told you both this many times before, but that intro is just one of my favorites.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, he's one of my longtime friends, and I approached him and was like, "Hey, you have a really good voice." That's always been his thing, and he would always joke and do like the Disney, ride, like, "Please stand clear of the door," and that he just nailed it every time, and that's what we went with. So
if I pay him enough money, could he like do like a coming soon to Disney DVD from the Disney Vault? Like, would he do that?
He would be happy to.
And for authenticity, that's where we need the levels to just be abysmally high, because I feel like it always blew out my TV speakers as a kid.
Right.
They kick open the Disney Vault and like nothing but like nuclear energy is like washing over the faces of children and they're infected. Sorry.
The mouse has arrived.
Hail the Rat King.
Hail Michael Eisner. We
absolutely yes. Don't even get me started.
So we, of course, the boys of ListOff. It's just one of the many podcasting friends that we've made. But we were on their show a little while ago, and we had such a great time that we were like, let's get you guys on like sooner rather than later. And so we talked about potential topics, and if you didn't guess by the intro music, we're talking about our top 3 favorite Star Wars games. A top 3 list in honor of our friends at the top 3 kings of podcasting. I really bungled that, man. Tracking real quick. Thinking about what music to use, because as we record this, I obviously haven't done it in post. I'm a little worried because, Star Wars and Disney are now in cahoots. And, I was mildly worried about the Tony Hawk episode with all the licensed music, and now we're getting towards the Rat. I don't know.
I think that as a rule of thumb, they're pretty good about it if you're not monetized, if you're not making money off of it. Nintendo's bad, period. I know that. Like, they will give you a takedown order, but I don't think Disney is quite as bad unless you're like monetizing it.
Now, Ben and I, we were music education majors way long ago, and we had to take a course it was a teaching course, it wasn't a music course, but we learned about licensing and copyright. And Ben, I believe we were in this class together, but there was a church, just this little small town church that had a YouTube channel back when YouTube was new, and they used Part of Your World in like a church video, and Disney hit them.
That's so
They
great.
went after him, this small town church.
That's so awful.
Jeez.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I've heard about
Hail the Rat King.
Disney is a very interesting entity when it comes to those things, because like they love their free advertising. Like, you can film the entire ride if you're on it and share the music and like post it online, and it's fine. But then there are other things where you're like, "Hey, look, Mom, I drew a picture of Luke Skywalker," and they like will like throw napalm at your house. Like, it's it's just, there's no in between with them. So yeah, Rick, it's going to go one of 2 ways. They're either going to be like, "Wow, this is free advertising," or they're going to gun for us.
You could use like some free source Star Wars like music.
Just get the MIDI versions of it.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Fun fact about Star Wars and George Lucas, he what I originally was going to do was use Cantina Band as the intro for this, so it's not just straight up the Star Wars intro. And when he was creating those guys, he wanted to make a jazz-like music. And he was like, what can I call a jazz-like music? I'll call it jizz. I swear to God, this is true.
That's true. No, that is true.
I think I know this though, right? Because that's what not what Max Rebo band does, but it's what the Bith band does, right? In the Cantina. Yeah, that's right. They play jizz.
They sure do.
If he knew what he was doing, it's pretty funny.
It is.
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
But preamble out of the way. What I wanted to do before we jumped into the meat of this, because I dropped the ball, I meant to ask the listeners what some of their favorite games were. Forgot to do that. So, what I thought I'd do to get us started in some Star Wars flavor was, I thought I'd ask each of you, if you had to rank the Star Wars movies on a scale of like 3, 2, 1, 3 being your least favorite, 1 being your favorite, the prequels, the original trilogy, and the sequels, how would you rank them?
So, like, as a whole, which one is the number 1 trilogy, number 2 trilogy, number 3 trilogy?
Strongest as a
or
whole,
each individual movies? Okay.
No. That could be its own podcast.
Okay.
I'll go first, if that's okay, since I posed the question.
Sure.
I'll go first.
I have to go last for my safety.
I would like to go. If you want to go first, I would like to go second because I have no fear in my ranking.
No, please. You're more confident than I. After you.
Okay, so my number 1 is Return of the Jedi. And it's because the beginning 20 minutes of that movie are the best 20 minutes in cinema, period. That's why. It's so good. The whole Jabba Palace scene, you're finally seeing Luke at the height of his powers, what you've been wanting this whole time. And the movie goes places from there, but it's fine. I think it's fine as far as the Ewoks go. I'm not as let down as other people were. I really appreciated that movie. I thought it had a lot of good arcs and good closing arcs for the characters that we grew to love over that beginning trilogy. From there, do I have to give context for each one, or do you want me to just give the numbers?
So are you saying your number 1 is the original trilogy? Just like if you had to rank each trilogy?
Oh, it's just the trilogies?
Yeah, the trilogies as a whole.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I'd say, the original trilogy. I could go movie by movie, too.
Oh, yes. Yes, we could.
But I'll do the original trilogy first. I'm going to go with the sequel trilogy next, and then the prequel trilogy. And it is close. But I honestly think that The Force Awakens was not that bad at all. And I think that the second film of the sequel trilogy is like my 3rd favorite Star Wars movie of all time.
So say the third of the sequel is your third?
No. The middle movie, the
film. Last Jedi.
The Last
is
Jedi.
Your third favorite of all time.
The Rise of Skywalker. Right, correct. My 3rd favorite of all time. Behind Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back, and then and then of course, obviously, like Rise of Skywalker, completely. Oh, we could swear here, right? Or do you? I don't know if you do.
It depends on the day.
Okay. Well, it craps the bed. And we're all aware of that. But to me, like, I just think the other two were done so well that I had really low expectations for the third in the sequel trilogy.
Fun fact, that is the one movie you and I have seen in theaters together.
Right. That's right. We did. And I think we liked it at the time.
Yeah.
So
we were just excited for Star Wars, I think.
We were. And then, the prequel trilogy is very close behind that, but not really behind. I have I have a great fondness for the prequel trilogy, for sure.
I'm going to be super brief with mine. Just 1, 2, 3. Number 3 in last place, sequels. And I agree, Rise of Skywalker, I think is a bad movie. Number 2, the originals. And number 1, I like the prequels the best. My favorite movie in the series is... what's the third one?
Revenge of the
Sith. Okay. Yeah, I get Revenge of the Sith and The Empire Strikes Back. The titles in my mind flip-flopped, but yes, that is I will go to bat for Hayden Christensen. I really will.
You're going to get another opportunity to espouse that love.
You are. And here's the thing. I just want to chime in and defend what you're saying, even though no one's attacking you. I just want to say, I think that Hayden Christensen's line delivery was a directive from George Lucas for him to speak strangely to show the transition into Vader. Because if you notice, some of the ways he said lines were actually closer to the way Darth Vader says things.
Well, and I think his delivery in Attack of the Clones isn't as good. Like, it's awkward,
you're right.
It's stilted. But yeah, I think it's a really good movie. Yeah, that's all I've got to say about it.
So, Ben, we've talked about that being the Obi-Wan trilogy, so I definitely love the prequels. I will say, I think you might be giving George Lucas too much credit at that point in his career. Like, I don't know. I don't know if he was given that kind of directive or if that was in his head. I just think, like, he was going for visual pleasure at that point in his career.
It definitely wasn't much pleasure in how he was delivering the lines. So I in my opinion, the Jedi are evil. Like, who takes the time to say that? But then again, Darth Vader does.
Oh, there you go.
That's true. Yeah.
What do you got, Brian?
So, I'm going to say definitely my least favorite is the sequel trilogy. It's a strong Force Awakens, and I came around on The Last Jedi. That one kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but then I grew to really love it. And then, yeah, Rise of Skywalker completely was terrible. And then I will say the prequels, because I really like the prequels for being very planned out and showing that arc, I think, pretty beautifully. And there's a lot of great moments, a lot of good battles. And yeah, Revenge of the Sith has that really good end lightsaber duel, one of the best. I would say probably second to the Darth Maul fight for me. And then, yeah, original trilogy is my absolute favorite for just nostalgia, for content, for characters. I mean, Harrison Ford is my top actor of all time, so it goes a long way.
I want to say, too, as much as we're kind of giving the business to the sequels, Adam Driver and, like, the main actors are terrific. Like, just really good. It's got too much of that Disney stank on it where the humor takes more of a front seat than a subtle back seat.
They applied Marvel humor to Star Wars movies where there is no place for Marvel humor. I like the Marvel humor in Marvel movies. Star Wars is not that way. Star Wars has its humor, but it's different. It's droids that can be sarcastic and experience emotion. Like, come on. Like, just stick to that. Not, I have, a message from his mother. Just, like, I get it. But I also, anyway, I digress. Rick, I'm going to be honest. I'm a mirror of you here, pal. Sequels for me. Now, before I say anything more, I think in many ways, The Force Awakens truly is the epitome of what a Star Wars movie is. I think it's incredible. And I'm not counting Rogue One. Because
that is like, yeah, I should have clarified. I'm not counting that in my top favorite movies.
But
either.
Rogue One is one of the finest pieces of Star Wars cinema I have ever seen in my entire, it might be my number one. It has no business being as good as it does, and yet it absolutely does. Just wanted to start with that. So sequels are my number 3. Again, I love The Force Awakens. It's just, I would have rather seen a through line with the same director carrying that ball to the end, because there were a lot of original ideas. Like, apparently, Kylo Ren was supposed to become a Force vampire and, like, basically lose control of himself and, like, leech life from people. And Rey's supposed to formally join the dark side. Like, all of this stuff. I would have loved to have seen that. Digressing. Behind, or in front of that, rather, is the original trilogy. I mean, come on. And then I love the prequels. Features my favorite starship of all time, the Naboo N1 Starfighter. Some of the best Star Wars duels of all time. Dave Filoni talks about Duel of Fates actually, being about the fate of Anakin Skywalker and how, like, there's this battle over this child and what they become. Like, literally, that's what the entire prequels are about, is trying to save this child, this sense of innocence. Just unbelievable. And if you really watch it as Obi-Wan's story, you get the right effect of it. I could go
Great
on.
love theme too. One of my favorite love musical themes ever.
It's stunning, and like honestly, watching that battle in Revenge of the Sith, and then like kind of having a moment where you jump ahead to A New Hope, and you realize that like how much has transpired like between those two battles, between those two interactions, it like gives me chills right now as I sit here. And that's why I'm so excited for the Obi-Wan series. So, guys, I was a closeted Star Wars fan for years, and then I married someone who is a Star Wars fan of an equal caliber, and I came out. So, thanks for making this a safe space.
Awesome.
Safe space.
Yeah, shout out to
Thank
Victoria.
Honest to the
Great guest.
Honest to God. Honest to God.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, tell her she was a great guest, Ben. Tell her
I
right
will.
now.
Thank you.
Call her in here.
Yes, go
No, see, so
So I just so you mentioned Force Vampire.
Yeah.
Right? Kylo Ren. Do you give credence to the Darth Binks theory? Like the Darth
I'm
Jar Jar
familiar
Binks
with
theory?
the Darth Binks theory, and I mean he has the yellow eyes. I'm just saying.
I actually like that's the prequel trilogy I want and will never get. And I like this idea of George Lucas being like, fine, this is why you don't have nice things, Star Wars fans. Like you don't get Darth Binks.
Speaking of Darths, Tyrannus, right? Count Dooku.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact, his eyes never went yellow because he never actually reached that fully corruptible state. If you didn't know that already, he was in it for political reasons. I love it. I love that kind of writing. Come on.
second fun fact, since Dooku was introduced in the movies and then later added to what is now not canon, but what I think should be canon, they modeled his lightsaber stance after his real life, Christopher Lee's real life appreciation and mastery of fencing. That's where his whole lightsaber, and they added that into the extended universe. They added I think there are 5 or 7 styles of lightsaber combat, and that's number 2, and he's a master of it. Very cool.
It's wild.
Man, see, this is making me wish that we would have just done a top 3 Star Wars period episode.
Do you guys want to talk about Rogue One for an hour?
Jesus.
Because I am all in on that.
Oh my Lord.
So I will, just to kind of backpedal, when I said my top 3 films, with The Last Jedi being my number 3, I was not considering Rogue One, and that would firmly be my number 1. But it's not part of the saga, right? What do you guys think of Solo, though?
It's a space spaghetti western, but it's good.
Yeah, it was good.
I haven't seen it.
It's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah.
It's a good movie to watch, but no one's going to fill Harrison's shoes for me. So
No,
I had some issues there.
And you have, well, that's the thing, is that I find that the best lens to watch it through is someone is playing Harrison, not even playing Harrison Ford, someone is playing Han Solo, kind of like, you watch like a stage production and you watch like one actor portraying Tony in West Side Story, and then 20 years later you see somebody else. That's the only way to watch it, because otherwise you're just going to sit there and go, I want Harrison Ford, which is, we felt that way. So
That's what I did.
I didn't. I was able to have like a complete disconnect and just say this is a person playing a young Han Solo who's not yet Harrison Ford's Han Solo.
not yet scarred, etc.
Didn't that also have Donald Glover as Calrissian?
Yeah, that was
Killed
a good
it.
casting. I would say.
Massacre.
I love Donald Glover.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we are here today. We obviously all have a passion for Star Wars in some way, shape, or form. We are here to talk about some of our favorite games that we have played over the years in the Star Wars universe, and whether it's LucasArts, whether it is the EA version of Star Wars, or anything in between. We're going to start with our honorable mentions, and as always, guests go first, but I just want to kick it off and say I've never played Knights of the Old Republic. Haven't ever played KOTOR.
Me neither.
Well, they're remaking that one, so that will probably be a good opportunity to do so.
Yeah, definitely. It won't be on my list. I'll say that much.
Well, Brian, in alphabetical order, you appear first in the list of our guests. Would you like to go first with an honorable mention?
Sure, I would love to. So, I think, Rick, you and I were talking about this one a little bit online, but my honorable mention is Star Wars Jedi Power Battles. So this one, I played it on Dreamcast, which I think you were saying like, yeah, that was probably the way to go. The Dreamcast was the superior system that it was on. I think PlayStation was the other. But this one was fantastic because you were playing as either Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon Jinn, and it was just a kind of top-down. You get to use a lightsaber, and you get to co-op with a buddy, and I think that was the strongest part of it for me, because I would just bring a friend, and we would go through the game together, and you had all sorts of different combinations you could use. You could block all the different lightsaber or the blaster bolts coming at you, and it just followed the entirety of the movie. So you're starting on that Trade Federation ship and going on from there. And yeah, they nailed the feel of Star Wars, and I think we could use more games in that style, that kind of top down, very pulled back. We don't really get Star Wars games like that so much, but I think there's some opportunity there if they wanted to ever explore that, because I had a ton of fun with this game. And it was at the height of, Star Wars prequels and just living in that universe. So yeah, Jedi Power Battles was my pick.
Never even heard of it.
Wow.
I'm going to hold my tongue on this one for reasons that will become clear soon.
I actually have not played it, but it is one that Brian has mentioned on our own podcast to me, and yeah, I really did go looking for it this last week, especially after you guys had conversed about it, and I was like, man, I should give that a shot.
You probably have it on your PlayStation Classic, honestly.
I do not.
Oh, wow, okay.
No Star Wars games there, actually, which was surprising.
You could actually play as other characters, too. I don't know their names, but I think it was like the Twi'lek that has it's a yellow lightsaber.
So it was in addition to Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Qui-Gon was my second favorite always, because I really wish we would have got a standoff movie of just him and Obi-Wan, but I digress. Well, he's my favorite Jedi, I should say. But in the game, you could also be Mace Windu, purple, obviously, Kit Fisto, green, Plo Koon, amber, and my personal favorite of the game, Adi Gallia, who had a sort of fuchsia lightsaber that she wielded with the blade facing down if she were to hold it out, which is why I liked her so much.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Kit Fisto was cool.
Great name. Very Star Wars name. So that's you, right?
That's me.
Yeah.
Is it my turn? Yeah. So for my honorable mention, I am going back to the days of the Nintendo 64. And specifically, I want to talk about the game Rogue Squadron. For me, this was the sandbox of Star Wars prior to some of the Battlefront games and things like that, except you were a pilot. You were getting to fly through these levels and complete some of the missions, and it was really, really good looking for the time. It required the expansion pack, and the graphics just popped like nothing else in that generation. It was really a sight to behold, and I just remember feeling like a sense of empowerment, as though I were a pilot in the Star Wars universe, which is what every kid dreams of, right? Like being able to fly some of those iconic ships and being briefed on your mission by Han Solo and the like. And it was just so cool to be a part of that universe and get to go to all the different planets. I mean, if there's nothing else in Star Wars, each planet is a biome, right? And nothing more. It's one single biome. But it was great being able to travel to all those and experience those other biomes and take down the Empire mission by mission and do some of the incredible things that you only saw on screen at the time. And the controls were so good. Really, I think of the games like Star Fox 64, right? When people think of like space battles of that generation, that's probably the first one that comes to anyone's mind. This game controlled infinitely better than Star Fox. Yeah.
Not nearly as like mushy.
Right. And it was just, it was a cleaner play. Like Star Fox was very on rails. You can move in every direction and all around you. You were given an arena and free flight within that arena, and it was really something that not a lot of games at the time had offered. In the Star Wars universe, what's better than that?
You know, you're igniting something in my. It's just a little spark here, Ryan. But I'm remembering a conversation from the last time we were all together. We were talking about inverted or non-inverted controls, and I think you're talking about how good the controls are. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they're inverted.
Well, you might be correct, but that is a different era.
It is a different era.
We do grow. We do grow as, if we're doing it right, we grow as human beings, and
you're a plane. You're an actual plane, and an actual plane would have a stick.
Well, it was typical of that era too. Like as gamers go, we were so underdeveloped, right? Things were not what they are now. Now there are systems in place. The reason you buy a FPS now and it doesn't default to inverted is because we've improved. The gaming sphere has moved on. At the time, what was GoldenEye?
It was inverted, absolutely wasn't inverted, it? Yeah.
Right. So what was Rogue Squadron? Yeah, it was inverted, but they don't do that anymore, and there's a reason why.
No, we've got two sticks.
We didn't know any better. Yeah. And I've had this conversation before. There are games of that era where, every control scheme was different. How you look around was different. It was that first foray into 3D, and games could get away with it, where you had to learn a completely new control scheme. Games can't get away with that anymore now. Pick up and play any third-person action adventure, and then pick up a Rockstar third-person action adventure, and you will be like, what are you doing, Rockstar? This is inexcusable. Like, why don't you just map the buttons like everybody else does? So I think, yes, to answer your question,
I'm teasing
Ben,
you. I'm only teasing.
I know you are. I know you
like
are, but this was not prepared. This is a genuine answer.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was inverted, but we've evolved.
I just want to say, I don't want you ever flying me in a plane. I will take in the controls.
Okay.
Wow.
I will say I prefer on mouse and keyboard standard all the time, controller standard all the time, the exception being on controller only if I'm piloting a plane. Then the y-axis can be inverted. X needs to stay. X needs to stay. But that's the only time. Only time.
Here.
Oh, people who invert the X are insane. I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, we can all agree, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
What's wrong with those
Unite
guys,
against a common enemy.
Rick, you want to go?
Would you like me to go first?
I am more or less indifferent.
That's what I like to hear, Ben. My partner in crime.
I'm happy to be here, baby.
I'll keep mine short because it is the same as Brian's. It is Star Wars Episode 1, Jedi Power Battles. It was released for the PlayStation, the Dreamcast, and the Game Boy Advance, believe it or not. I played the PlayStation version. As Brian alluded to, it just had myriad of issues. I just learned how to use that correctly the other day, but I forgot it. But I'm also a subscriber and frequent listener to the Merriam-Webster podcast, Word Matters. And if I learned one thing from them, it's that if a word or phrase is used a certain way by the general populace, it is part of the language, no ifs, ands, or buts. So a myriad of is also correct. I wanted to be an English person for a very brief period of my life.
Like you wanted to live in England, or you wanted to study the English language and all of its glory?
Let me grab my bottle of water.
I really wanted to be an English person. That's so bad.
My favorite thing, and I'm not trying to offend any of our English listeners, and by English I mean people who are from England. So when I was in England, one of my favorite things that would happen, and this would be at any store. I'm not going to name where I was. I'm not going to name the stores. And I'm not trying to be insulting here. And maybe it's just my ears. I don't know. It could be a cultural disconnect. When I would leave somewhere, like I would leave this store, let's just say it was called Winston's, okay? And I'd leave Winston's. That was, of course, owned by Winston. Because, over there it's a store called Winston's and the person in the store is actually Winston. You know what I mean? Unlike here. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, Winston, thank you so much. This is a great pair of pants. He goes, well, they seem to fit you right. And I was like, all right, thanks. All right, I'm out of here. Have a great day, Winston. Thank you again. And then I swear to the living God, the British always go, hey, here's your wit. Oh, well, baby. And like, I have no idea what they say as I ever, like, anytime I left any establishment, I had no idea what they were saying.
Could have been an insult, could have been a farewell.
They could have been cursing me. I don't know. But it was just like, wibby wob pip pop. And I was like, I don't know what you expect me to say to this.
All in jest. Much love. We do have a few listeners from the UK, I believe.
That's
all
fantastic.
In jest. Some fine composers have come from that area.
I mean, some of my absolute favorites. I'm an Anglo-Catholic after all. But again, this could have been because I was facing the wrong direction. This could be because I didn't know what to listen for. In fact, I think that's what it was. I have like 1.5 honorable mentions. My half one is like anything from the Lego Star Wars. They're actually kind of sweet. Like, kind of fun. Lots of collectibles. There's something you could like play with your family. And like, I don't know. Cool.
They before they added voice into the Lego Star Wars, this has been going around the internet. In the famous scene where Luke realizes that Vader's his father, since they're not talking, Vader like looks around, pulls out a picture of like Lego him and Lego Padme pregnant and shows it to the camera. I like that.
That's hilarious.
You know, Ben, you did the same thing on our show where you're like, oh, for an honorable mention, I actually have a few.
And I do, but I just wanted to throw out the 0.5 because I can't not mention Lego Star Wars because I doubt it's on any of our lists. But it's a nice game. My honorable mention, and I know it's going to be in someone's top 3, so I'm not going to talk much on it. That's Battlefront 2 2005. It's a great game. I've logged a lot of hours playing that game. I think in a lot of cases, this is lists of our favorites, not the best. I've not played Knights of the Old Republic, Force Unleashed. I am certain that they are some of the absolute best. However, Battlefront 2, I have logged a concerning number of hours drinking Mountain Dew and eating food that would love to stop my heart from beating while playing Battlefront 2 during those years, 2005 through 2008. Just saying.
A man of taste, I see.
Some of us did that yesterday. Excuse me.
Oh my God. Baja Blast, baby.
That game is not on my list, and I think it's because I played it on PSP, and that was not the best way to play it, so.
That's fair. So that's mine. I'm out.
All right. We're going to keep going? Just down the line?
Down the line. Usher us into the
Alrighty.
land of 3.
Okay. Well, my number 3 comes from the N64, and that is Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. So this is a nostalgia pull for sure, because this game is not good by today's standards at all. But I just loved the environments that this game took us on. I mean, the beginning Hoth battle is I would say one of the greats, up there with a Rogue Squadron type level. And just being able to be Dash Rendar, just the poor man's Harrison or Han Solo. Incredible character. Man of few words for sure. And I loved his ship. I think it was the Outrider. Mm-hmm. And I had that toy, and it was probably my favorite Star Wars ship at the time.
It was the poor man's Millennium Falcon.
It was. It totally was.
This was based on the book, right?
I believe so.
Cool.
Yeah, I have not read that, but
I love old canon.
But yeah, I mean, the game itself was decently fun when I had played it. You know, you get your blaster, you get different types of like heat-seeking weapons. You are a bounty hunter, so there's no lightsabers. It's just you versus stormtroopers and wampas and IG-88 and things like that. But yeah, there's a lot of cool levels. There's a whole level on a train where there's like no momentum conserved. You're just they did not program how trains actually work in that game, but it was still fun. And you got a jetpack for some levels, and that was just a blast to use in a 3D environment. Some of the best jetpack on the N64, I would say. And really good space battles. I think the last mission, forget the enemy's name, is like Zizor or something.
It is Zizor.
Zizor,
Prince
okay.
Zizor.
Yes. Yeah.
Of the Black Sun.
As a young child, I did not know how to pronounce the name that started with an X. So, but yeah, that was a really fun kind of all-range space battle at the end. And yeah, I had a blast with this game. I can still hear all of the different sound effects, which were very pronounced. Just every time you jumped, it was like a like a weird jetpack boost boot thing. But yeah, great game.
I've actually never heard of this one, so I was looking at the Wikipedia page just real briefly. The reviews are all over the place, like from 5 out of 10 up to like 9 out of 10, just everywhere. Fun fact that I just learned: the composer for the game, that wasn't, John Williams provided the themes, but the actual composer was Joel McNeely, who also composed the music for the film Holes.
Two suits, two tokens in hand. I got no respect cause I'm the new man. Got my shovel, shoes full of sand. Check out the tag, the name's Caveman.
Interesting.
Fantastic
That's
film.
pretty cool.
I remember really liking the last song of the soundtrack and that level. I would encourage y'all to listen to it because I think there is a whole suite of music that was composed specifically for it. So it's not just iterations of John Williams music. But yeah, it's also available on Steam. So I think you can get it for like $5 most of the time. So you don't have to dust off the old N64 to play it.
Yeah, I'll go one step farther than Brian, actually, and instead of just urging you to listen to the soundtrack, I will go ahead and urge you all to play it because this is also my number 3. And in my notes here, Brian, I have, this is my pure nostalgia pick.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes,
Mind
that's
meld.
exactly my notes. I know, mind meld for sure, which rarely happens, actually, on our show.
Right.
But so, yes, you had said, oh, is this based on the book? Funny story about that. The book, the comic book, the action figures, and the game were all released pretty much simultaneously. And so Star Wars was like a staple in my life growing up. I was raised on movies that I never got to experience in theaters. This was before the prequels were released and before they did those special editions of the original films. And this was that refresh for the entire Star Wars universe. Like, this was my chance to jump into something fresh for the Star Wars universe, and I jumped in head first. I got the books, I got the comics, I got the action figures, I played the game, and it was so cool. Like, regardless of how it's viewed now on how well it was executed at the time, it was neat. This filled the space between. It took place during the original trilogy.
Right.
And
you actually have
right.
Leia and Luke.
Yeah. And it filled the spaces in between films or, points where a certain character might be somewhere else. It was like telling the story of those moments in between. You had characters like IG-88 who popped up in the original trilogy. Well, guess what? He's actually like the nemesis to Dash Rendar. They have an arch rivalry a la Boba Fett and Han Solo, right? It was very cool how they were able to kind of tweak all the lore to fit this narrative, and it was seamless. It did work. They introduced the Black Sun, right? And Prince Xizor being the basically like drug lord and vying for a similar position to Darth Vader. By the Emperor's side, right? Wanting nothing but power. And actually, this was eventually introduced as canon in the Solo film. No spoilers there, but there is a head of the Black Sun they introduce in that film, and operatives of the Black Sun. So they definitely adopted some of that lore and made it canon to this day. The game itself was incredible. I definitely echo Brian on all his feelings about it. As far as the sound effects go, one stands out in my mind more than others, and it was they had a knockoff Wilhelm scream almost. It wasn't quite the Wilhelm scream, but it is up there in lines of quality, but its own pitch and sound to it when you shoot stormtroopers into a giant ravine, right? They do this. Well, I can't mimik it, but basically picture a B tier Wilhelm scream, right?
Oh, you rest assured that the Wilhelm scream will be edited in.
Yeah.
So
instead of that, it was more like right? Like, anyway. But man, it was just so much fun to visit those worlds like Hoth, and it's after everybody evacuated and the base is overrun by the Empire. So Dash Rendar kind of was the last person there, right? And there were secrets throughout these levels, and all the things that are expected of a 3D shooter of the time. But you got to go toe to toe with an ATST and with nothing but your wits and your weapons, and you got to go ahead and fight IG-88, just you against this killing machine. And it had all these wonderful moments that really made you feel like you accomplished something when you did reach the end of it, and you got to accomplish it with allies like Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and Princess Leia and Chewbacca, and it was awesome, man. It was an awesome experience the whole way through.
Great pick. I'm glad it appeared there for you too. Maybe I'll get that for Steam and play it on my Steam Deck. Seems like a good way to play it.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool.
I love seeing hosts come together. It just warms my soul. Real time, just before I before I say my number 3, I just saw Ben turn on his computer, which I had believed to already be on, and it gave me a moment of what is happening.
How has he been recording this?
Exactly. That's what I thought too. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
And I remembered Ben has a Mac. Okay. My number 3 this is also a nostalgia pick. I actually went back and played it, some of it, for this episode, and I acknowledge that this is a nostalgia pick because it is rough. It's a rough putt. It is the PS2 and GameCube game, Star Wars Bounty Hunter.
What's rough about that?
Yeah, I have fond memories of it.
Okay, so believe me, I do too. The general gist, what a horrible phrase. The gist of this game is you play as Jango Fett, which at the time, I was in elementary school, coolest thing ever. So you play as him. You are hired by Darth Tyrannus, who is Count Dooku, to eliminate this dark Jedi named Kamari Vosa. She's the boss of the game. Again, Lady Dark Jedi. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. You get wrapped up in like a death stick trafficking conspiracy, and all of this sounds like it would make for a fantastic game, especially today. It's rough. It consistently got rated like 5 out of 10, D+, C+, that general area. Controlling it. The camera is fixed behind you at all times. It's too close, and you also cannot control it. So if you run and then make a turn at a 90-degree angle, the camera jumps with you. So you are always right behind you. The combat is just kind of mindless. Like it's you kind of auto aim. You can't control where you're like dual shooting your pistols. You can't control it, but it just does it automatically. Not great. It's just technically it is tough. But as a kid, what was super exciting to me was you get to enter. I want to say Coruscant, but it might be another city from the extended universe. And at the time, like you could collect bounties. So like you could view if an NPC had a bounty on their head, what the dead or alive credits are, and then capture them. And this, to me, this was like Grand Theft Auto before Grand Theft Auto.
It was Coruscant.
It was Coruscant, okay. But yeah, it was like GTA before GTA. Like you could go anywhere, you could find hidden power-ups. Yeah, it was just very cool. And then also fighting those like cat creatures from Attack of the Clones and fighting the Dark Jedi at the very end. Very cool. I didn't make it that far in this playthrough. But yeah, fond memories. That's where they're going to stay now that I've played it again. It's going to exist in my memory as fun times as a child. But yeah, that is my number 3.
So when you recently played it, did you play the older version? Because there was actually like a PS4 HD upscaling version that a small developer put out as like there's like a developer who does HD upscaling of games, and they're very limited. They actually did a physical copy of it. I know, and they have it digitally available as well. Yeah,
I didn't know that existed. I streamed this on PlayStation Now. That's how I played it. So it was the original PS2 version. That's cool though. I'm gonna look into that.
I must. I'll look into it with you, pal.
Thanks.
My number 3. I'll do it with you. Oh, I'll do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
No, I mean I'll actually, if you wanted to do that game sometime.
So, sorry, it is from Limited Run Games. I apologize, which I should have known. There were 7,500 released physically for for Star Wars Bounty Hunter on the PS4. And yeah, there you go.
That's wild.
Rick, if you have more on Bounty Hunter, I am all ears.
No, that's pretty much it. That's kind of how I feel about it.
That's fair. That's fair. My number 3 features a story of which I don't have much pride in. So let me just start by saying it's not terribly often that Ben consumes an amount of alcohol that makes him a certain way, because Ben doesn't. Rick can attest to this because Rick lived with me. I've only had 2 of those one and only nights, as it were, and one of them featured me playing this game that I love so much called Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer,
Yes.
which is my number 3. I was racing with my friend Brett, and I remember this moment, and I remember it I remember saying it, and I don't remember feeling great about it, but I also, it was starting to get gray at this point. We're playing Pod Racer, and apparently Brett was like, "How are you still kicking my ass?" Because I had knocked over his beer, and while trying to help him clean it up, I looked up through him and said, "Now this is pod racing." And that was lights out at that point. It was like end of consciousness. So, this was one of those games that I didn't own as a kid, but all of my friends did. So like I would play it with them and I was like, this is awesome. But like I don't know, I didn't have a lot of new games as a kid. Like, you know, getting a game was like it was an occasion, you know what I mean? And this was one that I never got. I also didn't have a PlayStation. So like, you know, I had N64, which I I'm seeing that it was out for, but I don't know. I fell more in love with the game as an adult whenever it came out on the Switch and I could play it there. Kind of a neat game, actually. Like the fact that you have a lot of things you have to balance while racing, and the fact that the courses aren't all just like carbon copies of each other. I don't know. There's a legitimate challenge. There's some customization. It doesn't really make your pod racer look all that great, but it was fun. It kind of pleased that part of my brain that likes to drive stick. You know what I mean? Like I was like, yes, I have to be able to cool off my engine, boost my engine, heal the engine. I don't know. It was kind of fun. I didn't think I'd like it.
I remember liking how the pods took damage and you would get those flare outs on different sides depending on kind of if you hit it too many times. I also really liked the box. They had a set with the N64 that had Pod Racer, and it was its own box that it came in. Probably pretty rare nowadays, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So, just real quick, Ben, when you lost consciousness, did you try spinning? Because that's a good trick.
I absolutely did. Yeah, it was great. No, I did not try that.
You couldn't help but spin.
No, that's Star Wars.
It was beyond me.
You had a few too many of those blue milks, you know what I mean?
I sure did. No, and I would not recommend it for anyone. I also would really recommend the blue milk in Galaxy's Edge, but that's a conversation for another time.
Oh man, we could talk about Galaxy's Edge.
My dude. But all that to say, Pod Racer. Pod Racer is my number 3. I like Pod Racers, and I kind of like that George Lucas was like, this is my scene. When he wrote the movie, he was like, nobody touches pod racing. An interesting scene to point out that Anakin is good at flying things. But I mean, it kind of, it comes back later with the Starfighter. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's when he tried spinning. Yeah, it was a good way. It was a bit heavy-handed. Like, hey, get it? Because he uses the Force. He's the only human who could pod race. But I really enjoyed the arcade version of this. I thought it was one of the coolest arcade cabinets just to sit in and have the 2 handles there that you can manipulate. It was a lot of fun to play. I agree. It's a great pick, man.
It's not the best Star Wars game by any means. I had fun. I don't know. I still have fun because I have it on the Switch.
Are there any other... Oh, I was just going to... Are there any other Star Wars racers out there? Or this is it?
I don't think there are any others. What were you going to say, Rick?
I was going to go a different direction. I don't know if there are any other Star Wars racers either. I have a vision in my head of like a small cart, big head version of Darth Maul as a kart racer, but that might be just like a secret character in another game.
I feel like that might be like a Disney Infinity or one of those type of games.
A Fortnite crossover kind of thing?
Yeah, probably Fortnite.
Who knows? I've seen it, though. I know what you're talking about. I just don't know where I've seen it.
A Happy Meal toy, perhaps? I could like picture that in my mind, right? A little like Darth Maul with a big head.
So I've only ever played this game at a kiosk in Toys R Us. R.I.P. to the legend. But I had a lot of, they were podcast pod racing. Jeez Louise. Somebody's made a joke or a riff or a YouTube skit of that, I'm sure. They made pod racing like Hot Wheels style things where it had like the little pod racers of each individual character and they came in like packs. I had a bunch of those, but I had 3 like really prized Star Wars memorabilia things as a kid. 2 of them were like die-cast models of Anakin and Sebulba's pod racers.
Nice.
It's very cool.
I love those things.
I do want to talk more about this because Ben, you said like is it the best Star Wars game? Like who's to say?
I know.
You had fun with it,
I
man.
know.
And I think we all had fun with this game. So it's up there. It is list worthy for sure. And nobody could say what belongs on anyone else's list.
That's right.
I feel very affirmed in a way that I wasn't expecting to feel tonight, so thank you.
Yeah, this was a heavy rental for me. I never owned it, but Blockbuster got a lot of my money for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, if we want to move on, I got my number 2 ready, and that is the Knights of the Old Republic. KOTOR, as it is now known as, is a fantastic game made by BioWare, and that is where the DNA kind of bleeds into some other beloved franchises, Mass Effect for me, and this was the progenitor of all of that. You go through this game and can't talk about some of it because it's a heavily story-based game. And there are so many things that happen, and I am so eager to hear how they remake this, and having the knowledge that I have and to be able to play that is going to be so incredible. But the gist of the game is you are that kind of amnesiac Jedi, and you don't have your powers, and then you eventually get your powers, and it's basically a turn-based game, but there's no like battle gauges or anything. You just kind of understand it to be turn-based with the flow of the combat, and you have different party members and you can signal them to help you out in different circumstances. But the lightsaber part of the game is really cool. You get all sorts of different techniques and you can employ them in that kind of turn-based queue, and you're fighting everything under the Star Wars suns. There are so many cool things to say about it, but I think the strongest point of this game is those dialogue options and understanding all the different Star Wars characters that you encounter and just realizing your place in that universe. So yeah, and the sequel's really good too. I have to put the first one because it has some of those just wow moments for me. The sequel was really good too. I think it was a different developer, same people who made, I want to say, the Fallout New Vegas. I could be completely wrong on that, but there's a lot of pedigree there for sure. Incredible games, and yeah, that first KOTOR, there's a bunch of ways to play it, but I would probably say if you haven't played it, like the 2 of you have mentioned, probably waiting for that remake is going to be the best way to experience it. It's a little rough by today's standards in some aspects, but I can almost guarantee that they're going to take tremendous care in making the remake one of the strongest Star Wars titles.
Yeah, I played this. I worked at an amusement park at Hershey Park one summer, and I was living out there, and I played this because you're working at a theme park 5 days, 6 days a week. The last thing you want to do is like go to a theme park. So I played this in the evenings, and this was in 2013 or 2014, and at the time I just I was so not into it, and even as I remember as far back as 2016, there were rumors that this was getting a remake. So I just kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And I know I've been spoiled on some things, but they're so vague at this point that I'll certainly pick up that remake for sure.
I actually have an interesting way that I played this. I played it when it came out. So, that 2003, I think I did play it in 2004 when it came to Xbox. And it was during a time, I live in Florida, and there was a triple hurricane threat during this time. I think Hurricane Ivan was one of the worst in my area, and it was a great game to just kind of sit there and hope the power didn't go out and just wait out hurricane after hurricane. But yeah, that I just have forever linked in my mind that time of my life and playing this game, and it was an interesting time to play it for sure.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the remake. I will definitely be scooping that up. I think we're probably due to see more of it, of the remake. It's been a while since that reveal, and it was a very brief reveal. The MMO is actually just the Old Republic, though. Not to correct you, but I guess that's what I'm doing.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Guys,
Star Wars: The Old Republic.
don't fight, guys.
But it's
we
still
do it all the
in,
time.
It's in that time. So it's
We don't. Yeah, I wouldn't say we ever fight. Do you think
That
we
was a
fight?
joke.
we
It was
fight
a
all
joke.
the time.
Oh, no.
No,
they're fighting about fighting.
I'm furious.
Hold on, is it a fight if like the same person always wins?
Oh no.
That's called abuse.
Oh, well, it's definitely not that. It's definitely not that.
I'm kidding.
Because Brian always wins.
No, probably.
I think it's a great pick. But kind of surprised it's not your number one. I will say that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
What have
good
you
job.
got?
Yeah.
So I have a game. My game is Battlefront 2. However, it is Battlefront 2 Celebration Edition. It is the DICE Battlefront 2. And and there is good reason why. I think a lot of people praise the early Battlefront games, and for the time they were phenomenal, but they are flawed. They are greatly flawed games. No offense if anybody has them upcoming on their list. But to play them now, if I were asked if I were going to play the original Battlefront 2 or the DICE Battlefront 2, I would 100% choose the DICE Battlefront 2. So DICE as a developer is notorious for putting out incomplete games. And this was no exception. This game was laughable at launch. However, 2 years after launch, it is just an incredible experience. The Celebration Edition released with all the updates that had been done. It gave you extra maps, costumes, etc. This game really reached a point where it just sang, and it gave fans of the entire saga the ultimate sandbox of their dreams to play in. There were 47 maps when it was all said and done to play on. Tons of different modes and maps exclusive to each mode that, you could revisit Geonosis, Crate, Mos Eisley, Naboo, Camino, Bespin, like all of these worlds that you recognize all these battles from, and you got to take part in it. And being on the new gen of systems, it was extremely cinematic, especially when you were in first person. I mean, to be on Crate and have explosions happening next to you, and that that red salt pops up, right? And like it was beautiful to look at. And they had all these little trenches you could go in and like fight people. You also had these cold, like emotionless interiors of the second Death Star for some of the battles, and they handled all the reflections. Everything was so well done. They had an interesting battle point system where you didn't necessarily have to be good to get better characters by the end of the match. You could just accumulate these points, even by being mediocre. Even if you had a negative kill death ratio, you would still eventually get enough battle points to where you can, call in reinforcements, and the next time you spawn, you're a death trooper or an ATST, or perhaps even Kylo Ren or Darth Vader or Luke Skywalker, or some of these heroes and Sith that are notorious throughout the series, each one with their own attributes and how they play into combat. I mean, you could play right now. I guarantee you it still has a player base. It really picked up steam in that year 1.5 mark. People started coming around on this game, and I think rightfully so. I mean, yeah, DICE unquestionably fumbled the launch of this game.
Well, I think it was top-down problems with the controversy and
monetization.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was
absolutely.
EA, sticking
Right.
their fingers in it.
Yeah, you get DICE and EA on the same game, and it's almost guaranteed to be a disaster, at least at release. Ryan, I will say, I played this as recently with some friends as October, and I'll keep my opinions short because they'll come up later, but, it's still very active, fairly active.
Yeah. So I do appreciate that. I'm not going to say they righted the wrongs as far as monetization goes, but even before the Celebration Edition was released, you could get the game, the entire package with no what is it? What do they call it? The microtransactions for pennies on the dollar. I mean, even the Celebration Edition with all the bells and whistles was $25 at release, with no microtransactions. So I definitely don't think they righted the wrongs, and I think it was only due to mounting pressure from gamers saying, like, how could you do this awful thing, that they even made that an option. But yeah, by the end of, and it's still going, so it's unfair to say by the end of its life, but the product that it is now is awesome. It is the best online multiplayer Star Wars adventure out there, in my opinion.
High praise.
I never played it.
Crickets.
Yeah, I don't. It's going to come up in a meaningful way for my list in a bit, so I don't want to take too much time.
Yeah, you're good, man.
Ben, have you played this one?
I'm waiting to hear if it's a meaningful negative or a meaningful positive, but I guess we'll find out, man.
All right. Well, Ben and Brian, it's worth a play. I mean, if nothing else, it's worth a play. Yeah, there was a time where me and a buddy of mine, who's in the Discord, but I don't think he's very active, we would play local multiplayer all the time on that. But yeah, them's was the before times. Not happening much these days. I'll keep us moving forward into my number 2, which is the most recent Star Wars game I've played, and that is Jedi Fallen Order. This was one of the first games, along with Disco Elysium, that I played when I got a gaming machine. It came out at the end of 2019 for Windows, PS4, Xbox One, 2020 for Stadia, and I think it's on PS5 and Xbox Series X/S, I believe.
Yeah.
But I think it's just terrific. I don't have a critical opinion on it. I'm not ready to talk about what it does, like, right and wrong on a deep, meaningful level, but I had a good time playing it. It's fun lightsaber combat that I haven't experienced since, like, Jedi Academy, frankly. And the whole thing is you play as this guy, Cal Kestis. This takes place shortly after Revenge of the Sith. You are kind of being tracked down by the second sister and the ninth sister, who are trained by Darth Vader, who also makes an appearance in the game. It's very, very cool. Yeah, and I don't remember much more about the story, but it's third person combat. It's certainly not as precise as something like the Witcher series or Dark Souls, but it's still fun. You get a lot of customizations for your lightsaber, which is super cool. A lot of different move sets and force abilities. I had a great time with it, and I can definitely recommend it. Maybe not at $60, but it's probably on sale all the time, I would assume.
It's on Game Pass.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go.
EA stuff.
It's also on Stadia for all of our Stadia subscribers.
Crickets.
Yeah, I had a free pass of Stadia for 6 months when I switched cell phone carriers, and I kid you not, I used it once.
I did a similar thing, just like tried it out. They had some sort of free trial, and yeah, Stadia.
It's nothing that I was able to claim for free with an account was anything I was interested in playing.
Right.
So, and well, no, there were 3 titles, but I owned them already. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not using this.
What a failed opportunity, and one that I think a lot of other companies are gonna greatly fill that void. So I'm sure cloud game is here to stay, but not with Google at the helm.
Ben, have you played this one?
Not yet, though. It's in the backlog. It's just a little further back. You know what I'm saying? It's a little bit further back on the burner.
It's very good. I really liked the 2 main enemies are the second sister and the ninth sister. I believe the ninth sister you encounter first, and the second sister is sort of the higher in command of the 2. I really liked her quite a bit. I believe her name is Trilla, or that might be
right.
Okay. Yeah, really liked her a lot. I liked battling her, and I liked her general design. Just very cool. The opening of this game too is very, very good, but the rest of the game visually and sort of dramatically doesn't hold up to that opening. They kind of put their best foot forward, which is fine, but the rest just doesn't hold up. But it's still fun. It's still great.
I would say it visually holds up, but they never reach the atmosphere of that first level.
And
like, visually, it's
cinematic nature.
Right, correct. That first level is so atmospheric and so cinematic, and it doesn't quite reach that height again.
I would say visually that, I don't know what that tree level is, where you're ascending the to the top of the tree.
Is that Kashyyyk?
Kashyyyk.
Oh, okay, there you go. Yeah, that makes sense.
The Wookiees
level's
look
really
real.
cool.
The Wookiees look rough though, with all that hair. They don't look
Awful.
good.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Awful.
You could tell, like, you say, what's that planet? And we're all like, actually, it's Kashyyyk, right? Like, yeah, we're all big Star Wars fans here, I could tell.
Oh, yes. That's a solid pick, I just want to say.
It's a very solid pick.
I'm going to be honest, my 1 and 2 are kind of fighting with each other, and I think you'll understand why. But my number 2 is 1998 Star Wars Rogue Squadron for the Nintendo 64. I don't know where to begin with this game. I don't know, this game really should be my number 1. I just adored it. I played so much. It's embarrassing. The story is fine. You know, it's each level is objective driven. It's not just like, you know, shooting them up in the skies or anything, but you've got a sense of X, Y, and Z access while you're playing in your favorite ships from the Star Wars, you know, original trilogy, and a little bit more if you have the right passcodes. So, you know, you can fly an X-Wing, an A-Wing, a Snow Speeder, a Y-Wing, a V-Wing. With the right codes, you can get the Millennium Falcon, a TIE Interceptor. You can get my personal favorite, the Naboo N1 Starfighter, and using a certain cheat, you can turn your V-Wing into a 1969 Buick Electra.
That's right.
It's the game was Rick's expression right now is perfection. Because yes, it is that confusing.
That's just such a late 90s cheat code to have in a game.
Yes,
it's
it is
perfect.
Yes, it is.
They stopped just short of Spider-Man.
Honest to God. But this game, I mean, again, it has that really strong 90s passcode thing, right? The passwords that get you all sorts of things. Like you can use a chicken walker. You can do other levels. You can have unlimited lives. You can do all sorts of things. I don't know. There's something about taking on the AT-ATs and the AT-STs. You know what I mean? Like from the actual, you know, you can play third person, you can play first person, and experience these basically any way you want. I've not really done the first person in this game very much. You've got missiles, you've got bombs if you're in a Y-Wing, for goodness sake. And every single vehicle There's so much attention to detail in this game. It's not even funny. Like the way that the TIE Interceptor takes damage. I mean, you're flying an enemy ship, so of course it's going to crash immediately. Like everything is so well cared for in this game. The sound effects are, of course, perfection, because it's Star Wars and it's sound effects and it's, the ships we love most. Get to go to places like Mos Eisley. You get to go to the Jade Moon. You get to go to Kessel. I mean, come on. And then you're fighting a man by the name of Moff Searden. So he's like, Moff Tarkin or Moff Gideon. So, the Moff thing continues. You're helped by a defector named Kason Moore who helps you take on the Empire. I don't know. This game. It's different. Different rankings.
I'm curious.
The one knock I have is it's inverted.
There it is.
Have you all played the sequel or third game at all?
I never played Rogue Squadron 2, and I'm seeing head shakes. Although, maybe, Ryan, have you?
Yes, and I played the one on GameCube too, which had like weird like platforming levels where you could
be out of your ship.
Yeah. This to me was the best version of it though. Yeah.
I remember number 2 kind of weighing in, kind of a little higher a lot of the time. So I was just curious if anyone had ever played those.
Yeah, I think for me too, it's the experience that stuck out more in my mind. This was the first time I can remember having that freedom of movement, especially in a Star Wars game. They did do it in Shadows of the Empire, but it was not the base of the entire game.
Right.
But yeah, I think to duplicate that and do it better is great, but it's also not going to be the more memorable of the two at that point. So have you, side note, Ben, have you watched any of the Book of Boba Fett?
I absolutely have.
So, okay. Well, your favorite ship makes an appearance there. So.
It sure does.
It's like one of the coolest ways to make it appear too. I thought, oh man, what a nostalgia feeling, right? Like
when it came on the screen, I threw up. Like I literally looked at Victoria and I was like, it was like I just knew looking at like,
yeah. So I enjoy all the ship models from Star Wars. I'm sure we all do. I don't have quite the affinity for the Naboo starfighter that you do, but that still got me. That reveal was just extremely well done.
And it's such a sick ship. Like its capabilities and jumping to light speed without needing, I forget the name
like
of the jump rings. Yeah. But yeah, no, you can use, once you beat the game, you can go back and use a number of different ships on a number of different levels, which is kind of a nice little reward. But generally for each mission, you have to use the ship that they have given to you, unless you've used the cheat codes, and then you can use those too. But you need the snowspeeder to take down particular AT-ATs. Man, there's unlockable levels. You can fly a T-16 Skyhopper in Beggar's Canyon. You can do the Death Star Trench Run. You can do the Battle of Hoth. Then you can pilot a Chicken Walker. And it's, I don't know, the music, it's invigorating. There's protective missions, like you have to escort ships. You have to search for a ship and then protect it while it's being evacuated. Such a variety in this game. And it's really kind of stunning. You're mainly playing as Luke Skywalker, but at the end, I believe you actually are playing as Wedge Antilles, if I'm not mistaken, in the very last mission. So I think that's kind of cool too. That's the Battle of Calamari, not the food calamari.
Even though the Mon calamari kind of look like they could be made into the food calamari.
Yeah, no, in their own way, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I don't know. I could wax poetic about this game, but I think I might just go play it tomorrow or something because it's so good. If you have any of, I take it some of you have played this.
It was on my list.
Oh yeah, of course.
I've played them. I think I was too young to know what to do. I remember having some trouble like with the missions and knowing where to go and what to attack. So I didn't get into it as much as I know I would have if I kind of sat down and focused a little more.
Yeah, it was hard to focus at that age, admittedly. takes place between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. And Rick, I think we've talked about, you had a PlayStation and I had an N64. So like there are games that you were exposed to that you played often that I'd never played, and vice versa. Kind of like doing our Spyro episode, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. This is just one that I've got zero experience with, but I'm loving hearing you guys talk about it.
It is a legitimately well-made game. Like it's a fair system. If you take too much, damage from people shooting at you, your ship, the icon goes from green or blue depending on your shields down to like a flashing red. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a fair game. I think it's a good game. Nothing beats the V-Wings shot of like 7 missiles that are homing. Come on.
I don't want to blow anyone's list, but did anyone play Star Wars Squadrons, the EA game?
That's why I bought an
from a few
Oculus.
years?
That's
Okay,
why
yeah.
I bought an Oculus.
Nice. Yeah, I jumped into that. I think, Ryan, I've talked about that a bit before.
Yeah.
I did some VR, and that was a cool experience. I think that is the only way to play that game. Otherwise, it's a little bare bones.
I've not gotten my Oculus with it yet, but I know when I do, it's going to be unbelievable.
Yes.
Yeah, I tried playing it, Sans Oculus, and yep, I didn't like the game.
Yeah.
So there's my take on it. So it's not my number one.
That's my number 2. Doth endeth the reading of Star Wars Rogue Squadron 1998.
Well, very good. My number 1, here it is. Rick mentioned it. I guess I'm surprising Ryan with it, but Jedi Fallen Order is my favorite Star Wars game that I've played. I don't think it's recency bias. I think it is just the most polished, well-made, interesting Star Wars game that I've played. I love starfighting, but I think Jedi lightsaber stuff is cooler to me. And this game really has it. This is best lightsaber combat I've ever experienced. It's got a great main character. I loved, I forget the actor's name, but he's been around, and to see him modeled in this game is really cool. And this is one of, I've played Bloodborne, and it's not that. It's not a Dark Souls game. I think, yes, it carries over with the when you die, you lose your stuff unless you go and get it back. But that's kind of where it begins and ends. I feel like it has more elements of the Metroidvania style of game, where you're traversing an area and unlocking shortcuts. And that to me is one of the best things about it. I mean, I love my Metroidvanias. Ryan knows very well. So he knew in suggesting this game that I was going to fall in love absolutely with it. And that story it is a very cinematic experience. You go to a bunch of different planets and meet a bunch of different characters. They have Forrest Whitaker's character from is that Rogue One?
Saw Gerrera. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
from the Clone Wars as well, and Rebels too. And yeah,
Right.
he's a very Star Wars canon heavy character.
Exactly. Fun seeing him. Those Wookiees are horrendous looking, but they serve their purpose for sure.
Sorry, one thing you had mentioned, it doesn't feel like Dark Souls. It feels more like a Metroidvania. The reason that it doesn't feel like Dark Souls or Witcher to me, especially in terms of combat, is you're not weighty. When you play as Geralt, you feel like you're weighing as much as Geralt's armor and sword and ripped physique, right? As a Jedi, as Cal Kestis, you're more floaty. And so it doesn't feel like that, but I'm glad it doesn't, because, at the risk of sounding like they who shall not be named IGN, it makes you feel like a Jedi, right? You're more acrobatic, you're more kind of overpowered. And you are more overpowered than almost every non-boss enemy. One thing that I just have the Wikipedia page up here, and I've been taking quick glances when I can, so as to not, fall behind in the conversation. I was reminded Dathomir is probably my favorite level of the game.
It is good. Yeah. And that's where you kind of have a choice at the beginning, which way you want to go. And they hint at, yeah, this is kind of a difficult path. You can go this way to begin with, but it's very challenging. One other really cool thing about this game is it's kind of a finisher. Whenever you're at the end of a battle with an enemy, they'll do these really close-up animations, and they notch up the volume on that lightsaber like 5 times, and you just feel the power of that lightsaber just cutting through these enemies. And it's always accompanied by a really cool animation. And that just really hammers home that cinematic feel to it. You feel very powerful, very nimble as a Jedi. So I love celebrating that part of the game.
I could be misremembering, and it's fine if I am, but I think they did something that they do in the books, but they never did in the movies, where they utilize the technique of using your lightsaber and then turning it off and then turning it back on for strategic hits. I again, I could be misremembering that, but I swear they do it, and that is just so cool. That's something I've always wanted to see on screen instead of like just reading it, you know?
Right. I think you might be right. I'm trying to like remember the animations in my head. The one that sticks to me is just like rolling over back to back with an enemy and just slicing them. That was always a really cool one. But yeah, this game is pretty amazing. There's a lot of different kind of challenge stuff you can do. There are hidden bosses that I accidentally found and got my butt kicked a couple of times, but yeah, the game rewards you when you do go through those encounters. And we get BD-1. I mean, one of the greatest robots or droids, I should say, in Star Wars history. So yeah, got to celebrate him.
Heck yeah, you do. So I have it's my number 1, right? Can we just go right? Because my number 1 is Jedi Fallen Order.
Yes.
Yeah. It is the perfect Star Wars game at the perfect time. And it was probably the one I had the least faith in when it was revealed. It looked like, oh, I don't want this game, and it's another EA game. And it was when Battlefront 2 was in that slump. And man, oh man, was this just such a pleasant surprise. So you had said a few things, Rick. I'm not calling anybody out, but I do want to make some points about this game and clarify some things. You said it's easy outside of boss fights, but I disagree. There are like shock troopers in this game, and there are specific fights that cause a lot of problems. At least did for me. Maybe I'm just, maybe I struggle more with the combat than you did, but there were definitive points where like you were up against either a super powerful beast that was just, you had to learn the timing on the dodges and the attacks, or multiple opponents that you needed to counter to even get an opening on. The one that comes to mind is they had like the shock troopers who would use shock weaponry, whether it be a bow staff or something along those lines, and they could block your lightsaber, and you really couldn't just offensively go ham on them and expect them to die. It was like more of a timing, waiting for the opening, countering, and going from there. Extremely cinematic. You got to fight ATSTs. I always go back to this, but there's something about being just a person standing in front of an ATST and still feeling like you're on even footing with it, like you could take it down. Such a sense of empowerment. Brian, you mentioned it being similar to Metroidvanias. That is actually a very Dark Souls mechanic as well.
That's true.
To traverse through an environment only to unlock a shortcut and be like, hey, I'm back here. Like, now I could just get here faster next time.
I think the thing that this game does a little more is those upgrades, because there are a couple of things that Dark Souls doesn't really do that, does it? With like, I got the jump boots and now I can get up here.
Right.
Okay.
No, that's not that. Could you imagine in Dark Souls that, like, you got the wings of flight and now you can go to this area you couldn't get to before.
That'd be great.
But that's very true. I did really enjoy the implementation of Order 66 as a source of like PTSD for the character. The fact that he had literally shut down parts of his training because it was too traumatic for him to remember his master and the loss of his master, and to slowly have those unlock through these like dream sequences where he's back to being a kid and learning and training. And once you reach the culmination of learning all those skills, you actually get to play out what occurred during Order 66 from Cal Kestis's perspective. I thought that was really, really well done. There are more cinematic moments. One that comes to mind is on Kashyyyk when you are swimming and you literally scale an AT-AT only to infiltrate it and make your way inside and take out the pilot seat and then commandeer the AT-AT and turn it against the Empire troops on Kashyyyk. It was just like so cool. It's that sort of thing that you've never had done in the Star Wars universe before. You've never gotten to experience that for yourself. And it was like, man, this is like something that I didn't even know I wanted to do in this universe, and it's just executing it so well. Yeah, I think BD1 was just awesome. He worked into your power-ups as far as you could get him to heal you or shock foes. It was almost like having a little ally on your side constantly. The story was second to none, in my opinion. Some excellent side characters. You had Sure Junda, I believe her name was. She was voiced by Deborah Wilson, a phenomenal voice actress. Also was on Mad TV for a while. And just her whole story of being that Jedi who made one mistake, a forced mistake, to turn to the dark side, and lost her apprentice. I'm giving so much away. I'm so sorry,
this is
Ben.
heavy spoilers.
I am dissociating as we speak, so keep.
Okay. But like there was just a lot there and a lot of emotional weight to that character, and it was portrayed wonderfully. You had Grease Dristis as like the comic relief, and oh my god, he is just like so good.
I love
this
that
like
guy,
kind
yeah.
of greasy little slime ball character, but like lovingly so. Yeah, he was great. And then there was the Night Sister Marin from
Yes.
Dathomir, who is just like such a cool character, almost like that Drax kind of no humor, takes everything literally character.
I
Yeah.
loved her. I wish they would have done more with her.
Yeah, for sure. They definitely allude to her, if there's a sequel, playing a bigger role in that, right?
There's a confirmed sequel for sure. Yeah.
Cannot wait. I'm so sorry for all the spoilers I've gotten into, Ben, and if I ruined anything, but I haven't even touched on the enemies like Rick did, you know, the ninth sister and the second sister, and they were both awesome as well. And then there's that whole end sequence, which to me is one of the best finales in all of video games. Just truly heart-pounding action.
Even the place you're traversing is so cool. Just the way they designed it is, oh my gosh. I feel like you've never really seen that environment in a Star Wars anything. So
No, I absolutely agree. I can't say enough good things about this game. Yeah, I think I've said too much. So once again, I should have said, Ben, like, you can remove your headphones for the next 20 minutes before I started talking. But
It's a safe space.
Man, this is honestly in my top 15 games of all time, probably 10 of all time.
wow.
So it's undoubtedly my favorite Star Wars.
Do you think that's heavily influenced because it is Star Wars or the game, or it's just a heavy combination of both?
So I think the game would be up there,
Yeah.
but maybe not as high as it is if
Sure.
it wasn't in the Star Wars. Like I enjoy, I enjoy games that are made this way. A lot of the Souls games I enjoy, but they're not as high up on my list if I ever actually made a list of games that I love all time greats, right? This would be higher because it's Star Wars.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I stand by that pick. So did we melded on two of these then, didn't we?
I know.
Yeah.
I
okay.
know.
Very good.
It's wild. Wild.
Ryan, I am glad that you touched on the story of Jedi Fallen Order because it's very good, and I glossed over it. I played this game like 2 years ago, maybe a little, like 2 years and change. So there's a lot that I don't remember. It's very good. The ending sequence, it's some of the best Star Wars gaming that I've ever done. Very, very good. And I don't think the spoilers were too in context to make the experience less enjoyable for Ben or the listeners. I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I thank you. I appreciate
It's
that.
safe.
I didn't spoil anything story-wise, really.
So my number one, this was an easy choice for me, and we're coming back to Battlefront. This is Star Wars Battlefront 2, 2005. Such an easy choice.
Yeah, baby.
Ryan, I wanted to go back to some of the things that you were talking about.
It's funny. I gotta go. Actually,
Well, it's interesting because I feel
weird.
inverse to you on many ways. So, ignoring the completely botched release, that is on DICE, that is on EA. That's not entirely on the creators of the game. That's largely their fault. I don't like looking past the admittedly very, very good visuals. I don't like that it feels derivative to me of Battlefield. And Battlefront 1 was not legitimately marketed as, but it was known as Star Wars or Battlefield, but Star Wars. Like, that's what it is. And I don't like that it feels derivative of that. I don't like that I have to wait forever to load it up. I have to go through the EA launcher. That takes forever. It has to connect to the servers. That never works, at least for me. So I have to do it again. And then there's all this signing in garbage, and I don't like all of that. That's why games on EA I tend to avoid unless I know I'm going to love them because of this. Rockstar too. Rockstar is the same way. Like GTA 5, at least on PC, I don't know about consoles. Oh, it's just so many steps. Whereas Battlefront, the original Battlefront 2, you pop it in and you're in the game. You're just going. That's not the only reason that I like it. I really think the original Battlefront holds up perfectly fine today. I played it on Steam before this episode a couple days ago, and looking past the graphics, which are dated, it feels great to play. Mouse and keyboard. It feels awesome. I didn't play it on controller, so maybe it doesn't feel as good, or as modern, but it feels right. It feels so perfect to me. And, there is a heavy nostalgia factor in this, I will admit that, but I don't think that impacts the game in a way that would make me not call it my number one. It's just, I have so many good memories of playing this just constantly as a kid. With my childhood best friend, we would just play this for hours, capturing bases, taking out enemies, unlocking new characters. And, the funny thing is, to this day, I've never done the story. I've never done the campaign, ever. Just haven't. I think the biggest way it shows its age is, the lack of online play, at least in terms of like the modern Battlefronts, because playing against AI in the original Battlefronts, or any first-person shooter really, it's like playing the AI in Rocket League. Once you know the game, you're never gonna lose, right? They can only go up to so much, but I really gotta say it holds up so well. The shooting is great, the physics are great, capturing the bases is so much fun. Throwing grenades and watching people just ragdoll off of bridges. That's so cool. Battlefront 2 was the one that introduced the hero characters originally, I believe. I might be wrong, but I think they did. That was exciting. So exciting. And they did it, in my opinion, much better than Battlefront 2 did, at least at first, wherein people would camp to get to the hero characters and immediately just clean house. I gotta say, I maybe tinted a bit with nostalgia. I accept that, but I think it holds up super well. I really do.
Yeah, no, I see your point. Absolutely. I will say Battlefront 2, gosh, it's going to get confusing, but the more recent one actually did their hero system the way they had because they had a similar one for the first Battlefront. Gosh, not the first Battlefront, the first new Battlefront, where it was like, oh, you pick up a power-up. And people would camp by it, but it was a big
the first one,
point
not the second,
for a lot of players. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so then they altered it for the second. But I'm curious. I totally see your point. I'm not, yes, absolutely justifiable having this as your number one. How do you feel about balancing? Out of curiosity, is it because it's interesting, right? It's a good topic for these games. I mean, this is the Star Wars universe. When you play as a character like Darth Maul, you should feel like a god among troopers, right? But I feel like in Battlefront 2, it's more skewed toward those powerful characters. They are much harder to take down, whereas in the more recent edition, it comes off as like being fairly like a fair in a competitive way, right? You're not going to last forever. You're not going to last the entire battle unless you are highly skilled at playing these characters.
It's interesting you bring that up. I also want to say, too, I am not a first-person shooter aficionado, so please take that with a grain of salt. But
same.
It's interesting because anytime I play the newer DICE's Battlefront, EA's Battlefront, I play with people who know the hero character so well that they clean house, and we just never stand a chance. And it's just a massacre. I will say it's much more fun. I think the characters are faster. The hero characters are faster in the newer Battlefront, whereas not so much in the older one. That's fun. I think that is cool. But you know, I would be interested to play them back to back today more recently, because like I said, the last time I played, you know, DICE Battlefront was in October. And that was, you know, it's 10 p.m. drinking with your buddies on Discord playing online.
Yeah. I would be interested too. I cannot remember the last time I played the original Battlefront 2. So my opinions of it are largely going off of memory. But yeah, I think you're absolutely justified in having this as a number one. It was a monument of a game. It's a tentpole title. My
favorite level, and I replayed this and it brought me the same amount of joy, was there's a level, and I don't remember the name, but the droids start off on an island, and you have to cross the ocean or cross a body of water to get to the Wookiee base. And like just that act of crossing, and the Wookiees are like, they could see you and they're firing, and you have to like get there. I love that level so much. That's by far my favorite. There is another jungle level from the OT that was another favorite, but I can't think of it right now.
When you consider the world building in these kinds of games, I mean, they're perfect. You know what I mean? Because like, who's to say that these battles didn't happen? Because it's during, right? It's kind of Clone Wars era. So like, you're literally writing Star Wars as you play it. Come on.
And that was exciting at the time too. In 2005, this was the first time that we had something like this. Again, maybe nostalgia is tinting this a bit heavily. I mean, clearly, you know, apples and oranges, but Jedi Fallen Order is the better game. Clearly, apples and oranges, but you know, this was just such a novel concept, and it was so hyped up, and at least for everybody that I knew at the time just went bananas over this game. And I still do. I think it's a lot of fun. If it had like good online capabilities, I'd play it. Sure, why not?
It's a good pick. I was going to say we're not ranking the better game, but I guess we are. But it's not about what the world would deem the better game, right?
Yeah, it's subjective.
Yeah,
you have to use the Force within yourself to know what's the correct.
Search your feelings, you know them to be true.
Believe the heart of the cart. Wait, the heart of the cards. That's something different.
Yeah. Nope, that's right. That's Star Wars.
Luminous beings we are. Size matters not.
So, I guess it's me.
Bring us home,
if we're
Ben.
done, I'll bring you home.
Ben,
Rick,
bringing us home, Bugale.
I'm going to bring you home because my number one, if I'm not mistaken, is your number three.
The gears are turning. You can see them. I was like, what's my number three?
I can see them. I'm watching them turn. It's Star Wars Bounty Hunter. I loved this game. And, you know, I don't really have, like, any argument points with you at all, Rick. I have theories as to why they did what they did, like the gun aiming system, for example, how it does automatically aim. I'm going to guess it's because of like the wild card of the jetpack and using it.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know what I mean? Because like, I mean, first of all, the number of items and the number of things you can use, you can kind of go into like that rampage kind of thing whenever you're like firing out of control and the world goes blurry. I don't know. I didn't have... My brain was not in a place in 2002 to be, you know, understanding that Darth Sidious was telling Count Dooku to have his, you know, Padawan killed because Kamari Vosa is this, quote, deranged former Jedi who's running the Bandogora cult. And Darth Sidious also wanted a good specimen for the clone army. I didn't understand any of that. I was just like, tell me what to do, game. And like pulling out my blasters, and I just started blasting.
He just went full Frank Reynolds.
I sure did. It was, I don't know. I loved this. I mean, it's, you get Slave One in this game.
That's my favorite ship of Star Wars, personally.
Oh, it's incredible. It's incroyable, as it were. So many bounties to get, and what's important is whether the bounties are dead or alive, because they're worth different amounts whether they're dead or alive, and I love that. And they exist, I think, in every single level in the game, which is just fantastic in my opinion. But we do get to use, Jetpack Django. We've got our flamethrower. We've got those missiles. We've got the blasters. We can tie enemies up. We have poison darts. Is there a sniper rifle at some point?
Yes, yeah, you could get different guns like assault rifles. My favorite thing to do was like just tie everybody up with the cable tie and then just punch them to death.
The punching.
I want to leave room for our guests to ask more questions, because this episode is, this is about them more than it is us. But did you play this recently?
Me?
Yeah.
I did not play it recently.
I'd be curious to hear what
a few years ago.
Okay. I would be curious to hear what you would think going back to it now.
So I went back to it whenever I got my PlayStation 2 back out and working again in 2017, 2018. And there were some things I was kind of disappointed in. Like, like whenever you're on Coruscant and there's so many people that look the same and you're like, why do they all have to look the same? But it also was 2002, 2003. They didn't have, it's sort of like Vice City. You know what I mean? Like everyone kind of looked the same. There wasn't much going on there. Tamora Morrison doing the voice of Jango Fett, like, come on. Like, there's so much about this game that I just absolutely loved. It was a lot of the prison level in particular was hellish. Some of the raids, some of the enemies were just a little bit unrelenting, but God, I always had something to push against, and I loved that. Yeah. I don't know.
I never played this game. Yeah. Ryan, you said you haven't either.
No, I've played it. Yeah, I've played it. But I don't think I ever finished it. It was a friend who had the title, and I liked it. I did not play much, but I do remember playing it and thinking like, yeah, I should get this game, and then never acting on that impulse. And it's kind of actually filled a space in my mind where it is like that great Star Wars experience I've missed out on. So it's almost reassuring to hear two people who absolutely love it say, well, we love it. It means a lot to us. But like, it had problems. All these great Star Wars games have problems, right? They're not perfect games.
That's the thing.
Go ahead.
No, I insist. I'm sorry.
No, I insist, and I'm not sorry.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is staying in. No, I was just gonna say, like, that's been the problem throughout all the years when LucasArts had a hold of them, and when they passed the gauntlet. Like, every major Star Wars game had the potential to be the great one, and so rarely did it ever follow through.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know you know. It sounds to me like your fondness, the two of you, your fondness for this game, it equates well to our fondness for Shadows of the Empire. I think these are games with problems, but man, they're just so cool, right? Like, you can't get over that experience of playing as like a real tough badass in the Star Wars universe. There's just something special about that.
Yeah, I think the Star Wars nature is really what elevates a lot of these games. We're talking about it with that fondness in mind. And just to say the bounty hunter part, I feel like, and I predicted in one of our predictions episodes that we would be getting another big bounty hunter game with the success of The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. It feels like we're primed for something like that, but we haven't gotten anything yet, so maybe we will.
And I think this game is unique enough and was good enough and was interesting enough, especially because of how wild everyone went about Jango Fett when he showed up in the prequels. Like everyone's like losing their mind saying, who is this? And then there's the whole clones thing and everyone's like, this is awesome. And then of course he meets, not unlike his son, even though, we have everything else that we have now in media, he dies too soon. But they give you this game where you basically can do, it fits canon, right? It fits in with everything you want it to. And who doesn't want to be inside of Boba Fett's helmet with the green screen, locking onto targets, tagging them as bounties, and then either having to kill them or just capture them a lot. It was so immersive to that end. And
there's so many gadgets too that you want to play with, right?
And it was
flamethrowers and wire traps and all sorts of stuff.
It was satisfying, but there were some parts of it that were like, okay, maybe 500 enemies at one time literally pouncing at me and bouncing on top of me is a little bit unfair, but I still had fun.
It's making me think there's a really interesting difference between LucasArts' reign. Rick, you kind of got me rolling on this, between LucasArts' reign of Star Wars games and EA's reign of Star Wars games. And it seems like LucasArts was always able to make the right game with kind of with problems, but the right game at the right time. Whereas EA is not capable of making the right game at the right time. Jedi Fallen Order, I think, being the exception, but I think a lot of people took issue with the Battlefront games that I enjoyed because it was Battlefield and Star Wars. I didn't really play Battlefield, so I guess I didn't have an issue with that, but it wasn't the game people were looking for. Whereas those original Battlefront games, it was perfect for that time. And I just think EA really needs to take advantage of striking while the kettle's hot. And like you said, Brian, it's the perfect time for a game like Star Wars Bounty Hunter. And I just think they're going to fail to deliver and take advantage of what is currently being portrayed in Star Wars media, right?
And it depends on who has their hands on the wheel, you know what I mean? Of unfortunately now, the Disney company. Something I say all the time is that I'm really glad that Star Wars has Disney, but I'm really not happy that Disney has Star Wars. That's going to be a thing, because if you've got, Kathleen Kennedy, and if you've got bloody Bob Chapek and Josh D'Amaro having anything to do with this, with them getting back into making video games and collaborating with EA, I'm concerned.
I've heard Bob Chapek wanted to get rid of the People Mover, for crying out loud. The People Mover, guys.
Pardon my French, but crucify.
Terrible. And I guess I should clarify too, Star Wars is no longer EA's.
Right.
It is now open for anyone to license out. So that is a good thing.
Sounds
if
like
anything, I
A
think.
New Hope or something. I'm so sorry.
Very much so.
All right, we did it. We made it through talking about some really, truly stupendous games. And I'm very thankful to have done it with truly tremendous people. And as such, ListOff does something on their show where they sort of have a more casual approach to talking to the guests at the end. And so that's what I kind of wanted to go into now. But before we ask you those questions, I wanted to give you a little bit of time to talk about your show, where we can find it, what you do, and etc.
So we are ListOff, and we are on the internet and in your podcast feeds. You can find us at ListOff_podcast on Twitter, at ListOff podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Is that right, Ryan?
Yes, we are on Facebook.
Okay, yeah. Instagram and Twitter, I'd say, are the places that you can most easily find us. But yeah, we do list-based podcasts where every week we have either just the two of us talking about our top 10 whatever. So top 10 hairstyles, top 10 soundtracks. We do what we call mission reports. So we'll kind of group all the news of the month and talk about it, or just have a bigger topic to cover during that time. And then we also have guests sometimes, but it's always a list that we cover, very similar to the format we just did here. So we definitely thank you all for having us on to be able to impart a little bit of our show onto your show. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I will say we recently did an episode on our show with pixelprojectradio. If you want a place to start, there's no better place than that. And it is the top 5 games we wish we could play again for the first time. Quite a mouthful. But I think you guys do such a tremendous job of creating deep looks into games. We are very much easier digestible content, right? But we do aim to be, an easy listen, like a fun jaunt into gaming. And ours
is very guts. Like, here's just my emotional tirade towards Diddy Kong Racing, and
right.
versus whatever. So,
well, and it's not always the right time for a deep dive, It's just one is not better than the other. It's just, what am I in the mood for right now? And that's why I was so excited to do this episode too. I mean, we talked behind the scenes about doing a list episode, and it was partly because that's what you all do on your show, and you do it so well. You do that hoodoo that you do so well, and but I was also excited to do it here because it's so nice to just be able to chat in a more informal setting and without having to worry about weighing critical options. And we could just say, this is number 1 because I like it, God damn it, and that's why. and that's it. Yeah. So that's very cool. I wanted to, of course, we talked about this before, but I'm curious, to ask now so the listeners of our show can get their knowledge on how did you guys choose to start this podcast? What was the impetus? Why lists, etc.?
Ryan recently informed me that, unbeknownst to me, even though it was directed at me and spoken to me, that he asked me to do this podcast 3 years ago, and I just either missed the question or.
I didn't ask you to do this podcast because I didn't have a clear idea of what we would have been doing. So maybe it was meant to be delayed a little bit.
You just wanted to plant the seed in my mind and accept the podcast so that I would then accept later.
I knew we were destined to be besties.
That's right.
Before we were besties, which I'm claiming. By the way, I know you have a lot of really good friends that you've known your whole life, but sorry, guys.
Hey, I've spent a lot of time with you at this point with all these podcasts.
That's true. So yeah, I knew I wanted to do a gaming podcast. I had asked someone else prior to asking Brian, years after initially asking Brian to do it, and the person kept turning me down. And I kind of said, well, maybe I should have a more clear pitch as to what I want to do with my podcast. I didn't really have anything other than I really like video games. I've always liked video games, and I really enjoyed talking about them. So eventually I kind of looked at what was out there, and I noticed that there was a lack of list-based gaming podcasts, which seems astonishing, right? It seems like there should be a lot of these things, which I'm starting to find out there are more of that I wasn't aware of.
There are more of that also share our name. Just putting that out there.
That's true, but they're not gaming based.
No, this is true.
They don't share our name. They took our name.
That's right.
So there's a difference. Just saying. But so yeah, eventually I came up with this idea of we should do lists about video games. And at first it was very loose based, like, hey, it doesn't always have to be top 10s. It could be top whatever, and it could be about whatever we want. So if you look at our early episodes, for example, I think we have top 7 hairstyles in gaming. It's probably our oddest topic of those early days, but we wanted to do something different. And so I asked Brian with a very clear picture of what we want, the podcast should be in mind, and he said he was on board, and then he ran with it. He came up with the name, and his wife created the image, and here we are. We're ListOff.
Almost to 2 years now.
That's a rocket ship taking off.
I heard it nice.
Yeah, almost 2 years. Almost 2 years.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great, man. I don't show any signs of stopping. I really enjoy it. I'm sure you guys feel the same way, right? Like it is something special to have this time carved out to talk about your passion with a friend.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it can be time consuming, but it's a very special thing. And Ben and I have been very, very close for a long time, but just being able to interact this often has just been so great.
And we both like games, and though we don't always share the same perspective, I think it enriches our experience and hopefully the experience of the listeners,
Yeah.
Speaking of games, what are you guys playing right now, and would you recommend it?
Should I go first, Brian?
You go first, because I'm eager to hear. You've been a little elusive on what you've been playing.
So I recently beat Elden Ring. As far as would I recommend it, if you have a spare 70 to 100 hours and you enjoy Dark Souls combat, then yes, I would recommend it. If you don't, that doesn't sound appealing to you, then no, I absolutely would not recommend it. I've also been playing the Returnal DLC, which is really cool. I'm having so much fun jumping, especially after playing Elden Ring. To jump back into Returnal, everything just moves so smoothly. And I'm playing a game this is one that I'm going to play all the way through. I could already tell I've only played about an hour or two, but it is one that Brian recommended, and he said, I've never been so sure there is a game you would enjoy, and that game is Tunic. And it's so good right now. I'm only really early on. I can't wait to see where it goes, but man, it is just really, really great. Great sense of exploration.
You can
Awesome
feel the
mechanics.
magic already, right?
It is. Yeah. Absolutely. I could already tell it's a special game with no, it doesn't tell you anything. It just lets set you free in this world, figure it out. And I think if anything, it's incredible that the realization I've had of how much we're able to figure out just from our history of playing other games. It very much plays on your ability to play games based off of having played games in the past.
Yeah.
And just knowing how those certain things work. And it's a joy to play. Yeah. A lot of fun. I would highly recommend that. And I'm only a few hours in.
It seems like a game you would love, Ben.
The Tunic.
Yeah, I think it's just called Tunic.
The Tunic.
I like that. The Tunic.
Tunics. Gonna go down to Tunics and get something to eat. No, I'm
Meanwhile, it's in England, so it's a guy named Tunic who says something you don't understand when you leave.
I loved England. It might be my favorite place I've been, but that's a whole other thing. No, I'd give it a stab.
What about you, Brian?
You should. Yeah, so I've had a little bit of the inverse of what Ryan's been doing, but I poured my heart and soul into Horizon Forbidden West. Loved it, beat it, put it on the shelf, and I think it's going to stay there for a bit. And then I moved on to Tunic, and then was just gobsmacked by it. I am in love with this game. I have been pleading with Ryan to play it and then to do a fully dedicated episode because I'm that happy with it. And I beat that and then moved on to Elden Ring, which was definitely a recommendation that the world seems to have put forth, and Ryan specifically was like, yeah, this is a good one for sure. And it's interesting playing all three of these games kind of back to back because they all share some similarities between them. But even with Elden Ring, those games have always been elusive in what they want you to do, what things are, what items do, but it still will tell you if you look for that information. Tunic doesn't tell you anything, and it is in a completely different language that you can parse through if you are taking your time and really paying attention. So I think this is a crazy trilogy of games that I have found myself playing, and I can't recommend them enough. So all three of those games have been high on my playlist. I don't usually, Ryan will attest to this, I don't usually play this many games and actually beat them this close together. So that really says something for my play style.
Yeah, I mean, Tunic has been moved to my wish list. So, Ben, do you have any parting questions that you would like to ask our guest, gaming related or otherwise?
I don't I don't have any particular questions, Rick. I'm just, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that we're all together. I hope we can do this again soon.
We would love
Yeah.
to. I know we I'm speaking for myself, but have had a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. I would echo that.
Yeah, 100%. I love you guys, and Ben included too. I mean, all three of you. This has been great. One thing that I wanted to make sure that I did ask, because I thought it was a fantastic question that you guys asked us, is there anything that you would recommend to our listeners? It could be another game if you'd like, or another piece of media, or an activity. Whatever you want, like food, drink, whatever. I thought this was such a fascinating question, and I wanted to now flip the interviewer, so to speak, and put it back to you.
I'll go first if you're fine with that, Ryan.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use this one again because it has progressed. It's a TV show, and it's a week-to-week show, and I am on the penultimate episode, and next week will be the final episode. And that TV show is Severance, and I am in love with it, and it has been a wild ride. And the last episode that I watched is just the biggest cliffhanger, and I am dying for Friday to come because I want to watch the end of this. It'll be the last episode of this season. But just a phenomenal show. Just watch it. I don't really want to say anything about it because it's best experienced completely blind, but it's on Apple TV Plus, which I know is probably a little less frequently subscribed to thing, but grab whatever 1 month trial they have and pour through this show if you're interested in a nice drama that has a lot of humor and a lot of mystery to it, and that is all I will say about it.
I actually think Ben and Rick were on the episode you initially recommended, Severance.
Well,
yeah.
go watch it because I have watched, like I said, I think I had seen one episode. Now I've seen all of them that have been released, and I want to echo and scream atop the mountain. This is a good show.
So for me, I just want to say what I said on our show this week, actually, is that go garden, guys. Like, spring is here, right? Hey, I think it's a beautiful time to be outside if you're in a climate where you can get away with it. If not, it's coming soon. And be prepared, because it's good to get your hands in the dirt and be outside and experience the fresh air and get something going, give something to nature and get something back for it. And if I had to pick something unique and original, I would say watch Turning Red. It's a very good movie on Disney Plus, and awesome Pixar film. I smiled from ear to ear the entire way through. My son loved it, and I think it's just such a cool movie with a good message and very well told. And I love like the tongue-in-cheekness of it all. It gets very like, I don't know, chibi humor, I guess, at certain points, and I had a lot of fun with it, man.
That's Pixar, they don't really miss.
Yeah.
I think
rarely.
when Disney does their animation stuff, sometimes they miss these days, but Pixar, come on.
Speaking of gardening, Ben, are your tomatoes still on a path of world domination?
Yeah, whenever you said that, I was triggered. So gardening is something that has meant something to me for a very long time. Actually, it's one of my favorite things to do on this planet.
Awesome.
Rick, you beheld the tomatoes, did you not?
I didn't. Well, they beheld me because I had to walk through them to get to your door.
The house that I'm currently in had some tomatoes that rotted in the garden, and then I planted tomato seeds, and literal thousands upon thousands upon thousands of tomatoes. One of my plants was literally 13 feet long.
Jeez.
And it was when I was trying to get rid of it. I literally threw it into a compost pile. There were these yellow pear tomatoes. They did not give any shits. They came to life in May. They gave me tomatoes in June, July, and they continued to give me tomatoes until the end of November.
Wow.
These tomatoes run me So yes, I love gardening. It's the best stress reliever that exists because all you can do is create while you're digging in the dirt, and it's my favorite. Literally, my favorite thing on the planet. Actually, low key is gardening and landscaping. Ugh.
That's great.
It's good to get
That's really
outside.
cool. Yeah. We could all learn something from those tomatoes, If we feel discarded, like, prove your worth, Keep wielding tomatoes through November.
And I had no idea how. Like, they had no business being there. No business.
Must have been a good compost pile.
God, I don't know. It really, I mean, in compost piles a stretch, it was just like some dirt that, like, I was like, well, I have to put these extra tomatoes somewhere because they grew in the garden where I was growing zucchini. So I threw them in this pile of dirt, basically, and they were like, surprise.
That's great.
That actually happened to us with our compost. I was turning it and then found potatoes had grown. So that was my kind of, thing that was happening and would not go away.
Potatoes be like that.
Yeah.
Pumpkins also.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me. You throw out a pumpkin seed and it's like, guess what? It's the middle of winter and here I am.
Yeah, there are a few things better and just more rejuvenating and refreshing than being able to touch nature, I think. Whether it is through hands or feet or, however you choose, it is, it's just delightful. Can't recommend it enough. This has been a delight. Hey, Ben, would you say the same?
I would.
The hesitation was gripping. I wasn't sure where that was going.
Same for us. If real quick, I don't want to interrupt you, but thank you so much for having us on. We're really delighted to be here and love spending the time with you guys and really appreciate the opportunity to come on your show. We love it. I listen to it every week. I know Brian's a subscriber too.
Yeah.
And,
I've been going through all those N64 games at this point. Diddy Kong, a GoldenEye.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we are so happy to be here. We are here. I mean, we got a taste of each other and our own podcast, and yeah, I don't think we would be here if we didn't like each other. So,
and the taste was good. Yeah, no,
That's right.
the exact same. I subscribe to your show. I'm sure Ben does too. I love it. It's one of my favorite in my current rotation. Yeah, probably would be even if I found it and I didn't know you guys, but
right.
Oh, thanks.
It's really, it's sincerely good. I don't know how else to put it. It's just genuine.
Yeah. So if you're a listener to our show and you're hearing these two gents for the first time, they gave you all the know-how on how to find them. No more excuses. And we're going to, we plug their show all the time, but we're going to plug this one too. We're going to make sure to put a link to their socials in our episode description, which will also contain links to our socials. Ben, where can they find us?
So my personal favorite to always mention is our email because no one reaches out to us, and I wish you would. I wish someone would just get into like some sort of like flame war with us. And that's pixelprojectradio@gmail.com. Come at us with anything there. We're also on Instagram with Pixel Project Radio Podcast. Here it is, everybody. You couldn't see that, but you could imagine it if you tried hard enough. Rick, where else can they find us?
I just want to say, if you keep putting out that flame war invitation, I think Keith, of all people, would probably take you up on it, and we're going to get flooded from Keith. But anywho's it. You mentioned the Instagram. We're also on the Twitter. The Twitters. We are at Pixel Project Pod. That's where we are. That was the one that was available that fit us the best. And we're growing there. We're active again. Was dormant for a long time. We're also on Discord. That link will be in the description. It's always in the show notes. All of these will always be in the show notes, as will ListOff's socials as well. Come find us. Come hang out. Find ListOff. Go listen. Give them a rating. Give us a rating. Review. Very nice.
We like you. We like you.
Yeah, we love getting them. Podcast Addict, Apple Podcast, Spotify, although you can't leave a review, just a rating. All of them. And with that, the two BR duos of podcasting, the two great BRs, come to an end.
Are off to have some Baskin Robbins.
Oh no.
Better than the Halo 3 battle rifle.
Oh, okay, BR. All right, yeah, that.
Baskin Robbins. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I got the Baskin Robbins, the Halo battle rifle.
Okay.
I was like, oh yeah, sure, okay. All right. Well, with that, I am Ryan. Nope, I am Rick Firestone.
I'm Ben Bugale. We'll see you next time.